That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Joker! Folie, Deux! The 11th film directed by Todd Phillips, which premiered at the 2024 Venice Film Festival in competition, because the 2019 film it's a sequel to won the Golden Lion at Venice that year. Warner Brothers is releasing it October 4th, 2024.
Todd Phillips did the previous Joker,
which is the 2019 Joker is probably by far the best thing he's ever done. But he started off with a lot of frat comedies such as Road Trip and Old School before he did his world-famous Hangover trilogy. Right before he embarked on Joker's origin story, he did War Dogs with Miles Teller, if you remember that film.
What is Joker Folie Deux about? Arthur Fleck is institutionalized at Arkham, awaiting trial for his crimes as Joker. While struggling with his dual identity, Arthur not only stumbles upon true love, but also finds the music that's always been inside him. What is your pull quote?
I strongly dislike this film, and I've suffered its slings and arrows twice, so bear that in mind. An endlessly dull, exceedingly impotent, and ultimately irrelevant film sequel, which seems perversely premeditated in its objective to be as obnoxious and tepid as possible. The joke is on us with Folie Deux, where Madness of Two refers to the film and its captive audience.
Mine. If you're in the mood for a bold, subversive, fantastic musical, watch Emilia Perez.
Exactly.
So, you talked about this film in the Best and Worst of Venice video we did.
Yes.
So I already knew you didn't care for it. I went into it with an open mind.
As you all should. Everyone should form their own opinions.
I do like Joaquin, and I did like the previous film. I'm not the biggest Lady Gaga fan, but that's fine. I did not care for this one.
Oh, it's just rough. And you know what? It has people that have been praising it to the heavens as well, even out of its premiere at Venice. And I have to say that I just resolutely disagree with those sentiments.
I'm confused by a lot of things, but the story is very basic. We know Joaquin plays Arthur Fleck, aka the Joker. He killed 5 people, 6 if you count his mother.
And one on national television.
But he's incarcerated awaiting trial for the 5 murders they know he committed, or he's charged with. And he's in this, not maximum security jail, but he meets Lady Gaga there, which we'll get to, but they instantly fall in love.
Well, he's desperately in need of some, so it makes sense on his end, but yeah.
And she leaves because she's there voluntarily. And we can get to that too. So that's the first half of the film. The second half of the film is the trial. And I really like Catherine Keener.
Love Catherine Keener. Yeah.
She plays his attorney, and she's very sweet, and she's trying to build a case around the idea that Arthur Fleck has a dual personality, and so he should be found incompetent, which would, of course, not prevent him from spending the rest of his life imprisoned, but, would be a softer sentence than if he was found guilty of first-degree murder and in his right mind. But that doesn't... Gosh, the beginning of the trial is pretty dry. And
this is one of the worst courtroom dramas ever filmed.
It's not until the 90-minute mark when Arthur Fleck decides to fire his attorney and represent himself. And that's when things get really ridiculous. Mm-hmm. But for people who like the first film, I feel like they probably won't be into it until the 90-minute mark when it starts to liven up. But that is short-lived because he's found guilty and there's an explosion, like a car bomb, that demolishes the courthouse right as he's being found guilty. He escapes and gets caught 5 minutes later, but while he was out, he was able to reconnect with Lady Gaga, Harleen, because she had broken up with him during the trial because when he decided to represent himself, he denounces the Joker.
He denounces that moves very quickly. He denounces the Joker persona in his closing statements. She leaves in a huff.
In addition to all his fans who are in the courtroom, they all get up and leave.
Gets a haircut. Bomb goes off. And he finds her all within a matter of hours.
And then she tells him basically like, we can't be together because you're not who I thought you were.
Because you ruined our little fantasy and our own little nasty world, yeah.
And then he gets placed back, again, not in maximum security prison, where another inmate shanks him to death. The end.
Yeah.
It's pretty uneventful.
And it's an uneventful 2 hours and 18 minutes. I mean, maybe this is just because Gaga is in my mind, but this is One Flew Over the Doo-Doo Nest. Like this, I don't like one moment in this film.
Okay, well, I don't dislike it as much as you do, I think. I did appreciate the cinematography.
Lawrence, sure, yeah.
I do like Joaquin Phoenix. Like, he's very good at playing this, like, I mean, how would you describe Arthur Fleck? He's emaciated, fragile, clearly mentally ill.
But he seems like a symbol that is also being acted upon. I don't think that Scott Silver, the screenwriter, because the first, I think, film makes sense as encapsulating an actual origin story as we see this traumatized person before they become this evil villain, right? But this film still doesn't really show that. He is this fragile persona.
I agree. I mean, I don't understand the purpose of this movie. What we didn't mention, or I didn't mention, is it's also a musical. And I don't know why it needs to be a musical. But, okay, what I remember from the previous film is, or what resonated with me, is this idea of like people getting what they deserve. Mm-hmm. And the conflict of that, right? Because the Joker killed people, so that's wrong. But also, these people weren't completely innocent or wholly innocent. Mm-hmm. So I think that complexity is what I really appreciated about the first or the previous film. But this one,
the cathartic violence and the ethical dilemma of it. Yes.
Yes. This one, again, I don't understand what's happening. Like, what is the purpose?
And I don't know if that is just Todd Phillips' big FU, but it's a very spendy FU to the people that I presume this film would be made for.
I also thought that. Yeah. I would, the screening we saw, which was like a Thursday, like regular screening, maybe there were like 30 people.
If that.
And many walked out of the movie because I mean, if you were expecting something dark like the first one that had more action, this is not it.
Well,
at all.
Action and also empathy for this journey of this person. Like, to me, Joaquin Phoenix feels really bored, and then we have to spend an awful lot of time listening to him sing, and he's just not a good singer. And I could see where that could have worked, or could have been fun, or could have been subversive, but it's too much, and he even seems bored doing it. I
agree. I think it could have worked had there been significantly less of it. Mm-hmm. Then it would have just felt creepy and sadistic. But yes. As it is, yeah, it just seems like, yeah. Well, I haven't been following this movie. I didn't really care to see it, but I did watch him talk about how Lady Gaga, or Stephanie as he calls her, sort of convinced him to sing and sing live. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if what we see in the movie's live, but he's talking about that, and it just feels so like, I guess I'll do it. Like, it doesn't feel very inspired or...
Nothing about this feels inspired. But also, Lady Gaga, who I find to be usually a bit pretentious and usually goes way too hard in this method-adjacent style of acting that she purports to champion, such as the fact that, as the cinematographer let be known way before this film premiered, was that she wouldn't allow anybody in the cast or crew to call her by her name, but by her character name, Lee. But there's absolutely no character development. And I feel like most of the time I'm watching outtakes from a Lady Gaga concert.
The only thing we know about Harlee is she's from the Upper West Side. Her parents have money. She is not incarcerated. She voluntarily chose to be placed in this, I guess, mental health facility. And she tells Joker it's because she wanted to meet him.
But that is so coincidental that even it happened.
Because the only reason he meets her is not because of her doing. It's because the main guard, correctional officer...
Brendan Gleeson, yeah.
He wants to sing, so he signs Arthur Fleck up for singing lessons.
But they only are introduced to that because Arthur's getting interviewed by, he's being prepared by his lawyer, Catherine Keener, so they walk by the music class while it's happening on that particular day, and that puts the idea in the guard's head.
Right, so it's like third hand by chance that they meet, so that doesn't make a lot of sense. Their romance, that sex scene, they have one moment, and I don't even know if you could call it a sex scene.
Well, also, I don't understand how she was able to wheedle her way. I know she's a voluntary inmate, but the guard just lets her into... Arthur Fleck has been accused of trying to escape while a fire goes off during movie night, and she's with him, and he's put in solitary, and then they allow her to...
Well, not even going that far, he is like a terrorist. Like, he's incited violence, like he has mobs of people supporting his violence. He should not be in the general population to begin with.
It's shown that everywhere he goes, it causes a stir.
Right.
Whether he intends it or not. There's somebody, acts out violently. Like that happens at the very beginning.
They have him in what looks like where Jack Nicholson was in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That's what it looks like. Mm-hmm. Yeah, why would you have him with all those people knowing that he elicits that response? But I still wanted to go with, I thought it was not the worst start because the film starts with a cartoon called Me and My Shadow. Mm-hmm. And it's like the Joker.
Like those old school cartoons they used to play before.
And it's pretty violent. So I thought, oh, this is interesting. And then...
Because we're trying to deduce if Joker's a separate personality within him. If that is a coping mechanism that because of his trauma that is protecting himself.
Which I think the title's fitting in that regard, and I think it's just a fun title.
The title's the most interesting part of it for this archaic psychiatric term.
But then after the cartoon, I thought the cinematography was beautiful, and then seeing Joaquin, because we first see him like they're waking up all the inmates. Mm-hmm. And they have to go empty their like bedpans, and most of them are nude, and you see Arthur Fleck he's emaciated, and you can't call them tidy whities, they're loose whities, because he's just like no ass, like nothing going on. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty severe. Then we see him in the prison yard, and I'm assuming this gay kid who's also incarcerated walks up to him and says, "Can I have a kiss?" The guards say, "You'll kiss me."
I've never been kissed before.
Because I've never been kissed.
What's it like?
And Arthur Fleck gets up and kisses him, and the guards start laughing and give him a cigarette. And then we learn that that's their thing, that they give him favors in return for jokes.
But that's how I feel like the makers of the film didn't even care about properly characterizing the character. Like Arthur Fleck isn't characterized effectively, is what I'm trying to say, because even in the trial, the first psychiatrist that speaks suggests that he's got these minor psychiatric disorders, one of which is indifference to other people's feelings. And it's like, but that's the one thing that these two films display that he does not exhibit.
Well, and then the fact that we have the psychiatrist representing the state basically saying that I don't think Arthur Fleck is mentally ill. Mm-hmm. And then, probably the best moment in the courtroom portion is Catherine Keener challenging that psychiatrist. Like, you interviewed him for 89 minutes and you failed to ask him about his childhood, mm-hmm. how he was abused and then sent back to his abuser, his mother. And then the psychiatrist admits, well, no, I didn't ask him about that. So yeah, it's just like, I thought this movie was going to start at the 90-minute mark. Mm-hmm. Like, we know that Arthur Fleck is in trouble from the previous movie, so I was assuming this film was going to start with him in court, and then maybe him deciding he was going to represent himself, and then we were going to get, 70 minutes of him just being crazy in the courtroom. Also, because I'm not a big fan of DC comics or anything, and I don't know the full history of this character, my impression of the Joker in the movies I have seen is that chaos follows him. Like, he's able to conjure up, like he's able to get people to do his bidding and incite that kind of violence and anarchy. Mm-hmm. So I was expecting the trial to be the biggest portion of the film and be constantly interrupted and leading to him maybe being acquitted or something.
Or this trial is like a stepping stone still to the actual Joker persona, right?
Right.
And crafted through his relationship with Harley Quinn, who to me, I was expecting this to be like crazy Peggy Cummings in Gun Crazy, influencing this innocent young man to go on a killing spree.
Then there's a scene where Arthur Fleck, who is about to go on trial, decides to do an interview with Steve Coogan. And I don't understand why his lawyer advised him.
Who's also powerless. The lawyer, Catherine Keener suggests a break. And they're like, no, we're not.
They won't give him a break. They won't even let her in the room with him. It's like, this is a recipe for disaster. Like, I don't know why you allowed this.
But I think those side characters that gave us some sympathy in the original film, that's the closest thing we have to that is Catherine Keener. But I think they also don't utilize her effectively, because when he fires her, which is very much like the courtroom scene seems like a very pale echo of something like Serial Mom, where Joker is defending himself and even writing ridiculous comments on
Doodles
a notepad.
yeah.
Like, can Lee get a better seat tomorrow? Like, you're being tried, you're gonna facing the death sentence, man. But it doesn't play up to what it could effectively at all.
We get mentioned maybe like 4 times that there was, within the film, that there was a TV movie made about Arthur Fleck. And I kept thinking I'd rather watch that movie than, I would have rather watched the opening cartoon 10 more times.
Right. Well, there's all kinds of moments like the one that's played over and over again in the trailer where Lady Gaga in the fantasy sequence is like, should we give the audience what they want? Yeah, could you start
anytime now? Okay. The prosecuting attorney, I'm sure is a very nice man. He's cute and all, but I hated that character.
Okay, he's playing Harvey. I don't know why we get that Easter egg of Harvey Dent, who's in the Batman DC lore becomes Two-Face, who you might remember being played by Tommy Lee Jones, and also Aaron Eckhart.
Yes, because there's that meme of Two-Face Aaron Eckhart in the hospital bed, and
yes,
who's the man who died?
Heath Ledger.
Heath Ledger takes off the mask, and his reaction is like, I can't believe it's the Joker, even though it's clearly the Joker.
Yeah, what a boring, terrible persona this person had. Harry Lottie. I mean, yeah, handsome enough, young, boring thing, but painful. Every sequence is painful.
Okay, where the movie really took a turn is when Lady Gaga's introduced, because I just thought this romance is weak, and then at one point she says, we're going to build a mountain. And he's like, a what? What does that even mean? And I thought, yeah, what does that mean?
She says it again to a crowd of reporters, and they said, we're going to build a mountain from a hill. And somebody goes, what?
Yeah, like, what? Then we're told that Lady Gaga's character, Harley, went to grad school for psychiatry. What does that mean? Like, is she a medical doctor? I don't understand what's happening.
Well, she seems real dumb. So Joaquin they both like to smoke cigarettes a lot, but I heard somebody describe it right after I saw it in Venice was like he's one of those vape bros.
Oh, I wrote down this movie should have been called Joker, Give Me a Smoke. That's all they do in this movie.
But the way he does it is so flamboyantly. It's kind of fun, but it reminds me of Jerry Blank doing drugs.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned her, because I also have down that Amy Sedaris should have played Harley. That would have been more fun.
That would have been much better, yes.
I think my favorite... The scene that had the most meaning to me was when Little Puddles goes on the witness stand.
Who survived the onslaught.
The previous film, and he talks about how, like, because he has to testify against Arthur, but then he's having kind of because Arthur is the lawyer now, so he's cross-examining Puddles. And they have a moment where Puddles is like, you were the only person who was ever nice to me. You never made fun of me. Like, I don't want to be here doing this, but like, you killed these people.
Yeah, so he's very that actor's performance is fine, but I hated Joaquin Phoenix's cross-examination because he's doing this southern drawl thing.
Well, it wasn't over the top enough. I was expecting him to be crazy.
Well, it's nonsensical. He quizzes him about his surname forever, and then this judge that is so futile.
Oh my God. I don't even understand how the judge allowed this to happen. I don't understand how he's not maximum security. I don't understand how he's allowed to disrupt the courtroom. I don't understand how Lady Gaga is allowed to keep visiting with him. Like... My last note is I don't understand why, I don't know what was propelling me in the story, because we don't think that he's going to be found not guilty.
Right.
So what's the point of building up to the trial? I feel like the trial should have been at the beginning, knowing that something needs to happen, because he's definitely going to spend the rest of his life in jail unless he escapes or something.
or he, you know, as it happens, he's kind of broken out of this setting, and his crazed followers help him to craft his persona that we know him to be. But then in this parallel universe, Joker universe that Todd Phillips has created, he gets murdered by a man that we see staring at him. He's staring at him in a way that if a man is staring at you that way, he either wants to, there's only one of two things he wants to do to you. One of them is, which would be killing you. And it just, the message is so heavy-handed and also not surprising.
The music. So it's to call it a musical is weird because most of the music we hear is not original music, and we also get the same song sung like 6 times in fragments, which is like That's Entertainment, which I found like
what the world needs now,
which has impact, but and then we also flip from them being Arthur Fleck and Harley, them singing in reality, and then them going to a fantasy place. And I didn't think the fantasy sequences were that.
They don't pop at
all. I thought the musical number in Apartment 7A was more interesting. With Julia Garner was more interesting.
I agree, and I think it's because Gaga is just unwilling. There needed to be some kind of juxtaposition between fantasy and reality. Yes, she's singing more quietly and arguably not as well in the reality sequences, but I think it would have been more fun to see in the fantasy even, because Joaquin in both settings is not a good singer. So I think it would have been fun to see her in kind of a Florence Foster Jenkins kind of way. But to me, she's very overpowering because that's her jam, right? And it feels like, and I've said this before, like watching the Sonny and Cher show, where it's like, I'm watching this, I guess, to hear Cher sing, and then I have to put up with Sonny Bono.
I think their fantasy sequences were meant to mimic Sonny and Cher. So I'm sure people won't agree. Rotten Tomatoes, it looks like people do agree that it's not a great movie, but yeah, what would you give Joker Folie a do?
I want to say my favorite, the part of that I like, is at the very end, when they're at the stairs, when they meet up, and Joaquin Phoenix looks at Lady Gaga and says, "Please stop."
Singing.
And then says, no, first he says, "Please stop," and then tells her to stop singing, "Can we talk?" He says, "I don't want to sing anymore." And there were claps at the screening I was at that originally, because it's like, if only we had come to this moment 15 minutes into the running time.
Well, I could be done now.
1 out of 5 stars. I loathed this film.
I would give it 1.5 out of 5. I do think it looks beautiful, and I do like Joaquin as Arthur Fleck. This script was just not what I wanted.
Yeah, too bad this isn't the one that he walked out of at the last minute.
Anything else?
No.
Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.